This is Never Caught: The Story of Ona Judge, Chapter 22, Mrs. Staines. 3 days after Joseph Whipple penned his letter to the president, Ona celebrated her first Christmas away from the Washingtons. She would not have had enough money to buy expensive gifts for her new friends in Portsmouth, but she may have given them nuts or small amounts of chocolate to thank them for all they had done for her. It had been a terrifying, exhilarating, gratifying year. For the rest of her life, she would always worry about the relatives she had left at Mount Vernon. She would always be worried about being captured. But Joseph Whipple had been correct when he'd said that Ona had a thirst for complete freedom. The fact that she found herself in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, earning money for her work, choosing to make everyday decisions that free people often took for granted, would have seemed unbelievable to her, except that it was indeed true. Ona was also allowed, for the first time, to control her personal life. This meant that, like many other free men and women, she was able to consider forming her own family on her own terms. And Ona had, in her short time in Portsmouth, found the person she wanted to spend her life with, a free black sailor named Jack Staines. It is kind of funny to think about George Washington's claims that Ona had been scorned by a French boyfriend who had abandoned her when she was pregnant, when in truth she had met the person she wanted to share her life with, someone whom she had met and chosen after she had made her monotonous decision to run away. Mountainous decision to run away. Ona had waited long enough. She wanted a husband. The truth was, she also needed a husband. Living alone was not easy in early America, especially for a black woman fugitive. Today, we like to believe that most people get to choose their romantic partner, and moreover, that they make that choice because they are in love with their partner. But in early America, men and women across the new nation sometimes married for reasons other than love. Often they married just in order to survive. A young male farmer might marry a woman because her father had promised the farmer some money or property, called a dowry, if the farmer married his daughter. When the couple had children, they would grow up to assist their fathers and mothers in the fields, in the home, or in their line of work if they weren't farmers, continuing the cycle. Ona did not have a dowry, but she was young and healthy. It's impossible to know if she and Jack wanted to get married for convenience, love, or something in the between. Whatever the reason, Ona Judge began 1797 with a legal marriage to a free black man whom she had chosen, without any outside influence. Less than 1 year later, Ona had been told she would be a wedding gift, and she knew that in Virginia she would never experience a legal marriage. This was a remarkable leap of circumstances for a young woman in an extremely short period of time. Jack Staines was like many other free black men who lived alone along the eastern seaboard, choosing to spend long periods of time working at sea. Black men who did this were called blackjacks, and although this line of work was not seen as proper for white men, it offered opportunity to black men who couldn't find a decent paying job elsewhere. It wasn't that black men were not the targets of racism when they were at sea. They absolutely were. But the position was still seen as preferable to being on the streets, where corrupt slave catchers and kidnappers lurked to take free black men away and sell them into Southern slavery. Additionally, many black sailors were often catapulted into positions of honor in early free black communities, receiving equal pay with the white sailors on their voyages. Often the lump sum payments that Jack Staines and other black seafaring men received when they returned home from the journeys were used to buy land or even a home, an unreachable goal for most black men at the end of the 1700s. Ona knew that being married to a black sailor would be filled with opportunities. She had found someone who could help provide for her and whatever children they might have together. Yet she also knew that marriage to a sailor would mean long absences and weeks of staying home alone. On his side, Jack was almost certainly aware that Ona was a fugitive and thus legally the property of Martha Washington. But whatever the disadvantage to their union, Ona and Jack wanted to be married legally, in front of their friends and certified by the government. Jack and Ona celebrated Christmas in 1796 by visiting the country clerk in Portsmouth, where they applied for a marriage certificate. They were careful to follow the law to be certain that their marriage was legally recognized by the state. This was important symbolically, but also practically. If something happened to Jack at sea and Ona was his legal wife, she would be able to receive any money owed to Jack or any land he had purchased. It would have been a happy story if they had been able to get the approval without any problems, but life was never going to be easy for Ona. Joseph Whipple had heard through the grapevine about Ona's marriage plans, and despite his respect for Ona, he felt it was his duty to tell Portsmouth County Clerk that she was a fugitive owned by the president's family. Their paperwork was delayed, and soon the county clerk advised the couple that getting a marriage certificate in Portsmouth was impossible. What we know from this is twofold. 1. Ona and Jack did not give up. 2. Joseph Whipple, while remaining truthful, again allowed Ona to live as a free person by not forcing her return to the Washingtons. Ona and Jack must have asked around, collected advice, and figured out a way to get what they wanted. They traveled to a smaller nearby town, Greenland, 5 miles from Portsmouth, where they filled out the documents for the county clerk, Thomas Philbrook. On the very same day that George Washington's farewell address was printed on the first page of the New Hampshire Gazette, January 14, 1797. The news of Ona Judge's marriage to Jack Steins also appeared in the newspaper. A simple 10-word publicity announcement announced their union. In this town, Mr. John Staines to Miss Oni Judge. Samuel Haven, Reverend of Portsmouth South Church, married them. The exact details are unknown, but what we can guess that Ona would have pulled out one of her nicer dresses, one that she may have worn while serving Martha. A veil would have been too expensive and impractical. Jack probably would have dressed in a tailcoat, a men's dress coat with longer fabric in the back, and his nicest pair of trousers. There wouldn't have been a fancy reception, but they may have shared a simple dinner common for the time: fish or oyster stew, brown bread, and maybe a bit of Indian pudding for dessert. Ona became Ona Staines. The two of them, we can hope, lived a life of domestic contentment, at least when Jack was not at sea. We know from the New Hampshire census in 1800 that Jack Staines was listed as the head of the household, along with 3 other people in the Staines home. What is noteworthy about this entry is that no slaves were recorded as living in this home, which meant that Ona was passing as a free woman. Early census records offered lots of details for white families, such as the gender and age of all the household occupants. This was not the same for people of color. It was only noted whether the inhabitants were free and the total number of people living in the home. We do not know who the other people were who lived with Ona and Jack, but we can safely assume that at least one of these other housemates was someone in need, just like Ona had been when she first arrived in Portsmouth. It was common for poor families to house boarders in their homes if there was room, because it meant extra money for household expenses. For Ona and Jack, this extra money would come at a perfect time because Ona was expecting a child. Ona would have still continued to work as long as she could while she was pregnant, even scrubbing floors and lifting heavy containers of water despite her growing belly. But eventually, sometime in 1798, Ona gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Eliza, the same name as the woman who had basically triggered Ona's entire escape from slavery. It's worthwhile to stop and consider what a massive political and personal achievement the birth of Eliza Staines was for Ona. She had been able to choose her husband, marry him legally, and have a child when she wanted to have a child. She was able to raise Eliza in the way that she and Jack desired. She did not have to rush back to work in the president's house to sew a dress, as Betty had done for Martha Washington when Ona was born. And Ona did not have to automatically leave Eliza with caregivers from sunup to sundown, as enslaved mothers often had to do. At the same time, Ona never forgot that she was still a fugitive. Worse, according to the current law, she had passed the disease of slavery to her daughter. Even though Eliza had been in Portsmouth and even though Jack Staines was legally a free black man, Ona's status as enslaved meant that Eliza, too, if captured, would be considered enslaved. The pressure on Ona to protect her daughter made her even more determined to never, ever be caught.